Today's episode of Desertwood Days with Kathy Blaze is sponsored by Movie Group, founder of the Dream Network channel. Learn more at dreamnetworkchannel.com.
I wanna visit all the places nobody goes. I wanna teach all the things that nobody knows. I wanna grow wings, leave the coop, learn to fly. Bungee jump from the tallest building in Dubai. I wanna fly around town in my UFO. I wanna eat real food, not the GMOs. I wanna make moves, call the shots like the boss. I wanna love like I never lost.
Welcome back to Desertwood Days. I am your host, Kathy Blaze, and today I would like to welcome our special guest, Mr. Adam Goldfine. Hello there.
Hello, how are you?
Great. Such a pleasure.
Oh, great to see you.
Good to see you, too. So, Mr. Adam.
Yeah.
You have some new things going on in your life right now with your new cinema.
I do.
New theater, I should say.
Yeah.
Or should I call it a studio?
It's a studio.
It's a studio. So, but before we get to that, I know you're also a DP.
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to also explain to our audience what a DP is.
Sure.
For those that don't know.
Sure. I mean, it really varies depending on the production that you're working on, the type of production that you're working on. A lot of my background is in narrative, dramatic, television, feature films, that sort of thing. And so in that sort of production, you work closely with the director to visually realize the film. Typically I'll spend a lot of time working with the director, looking at reference material. This is the kind of feel that we want. I like these colors. I like this kind of lighting. I like this sort of tone, in the scene. So there's a lot of very subtle things that go into crafting exactly how the film is going to appear on scene. And there's a wide range of what's possible. Right. So, and you're responsible as the director of photography for really bringing that to life, to making sure that you, first of all, are in tune with what the director wants, and that you have a common vision, and that what actually ends up on camera is an expression of that.
Right. Would you say that the DP is the director's right-hand man? Or right-hand woman?
There are a lot of female DPs these days, which is really great to see. In fact, one of them who is a very dear friend of mine, Ellen Corris, has garnered a lot of attention. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, for example, is one of the films that she shot. She's been directing a lot lately. And, it's been a very male-dominated industry for sure. Right. And the women that I'm seeing produce work, there's, not that there should be. It's like, why did it take so long?
Right. And that was what I was going to ask. I mean, why did it take so long?
Men, I don't know. Men are in the way of a lot of things.
Right, and I know it's more than just taking pictures, because us ladies, we love taking pictures. Yeah. And so it's like, why did that position take so long?
I think, it was just viewed by the industry as a male role, I guess. And it just takes a while for, things to change, for society to change.
And I see that because, in filmmaking as a whole, most of the roles, most of the positions are male dominated. Unless it's like, from past, it was like wardrobe is usually a
makeup, wardrobe, hair.
Those are the roles that were women based.
Yeah. But to go back to your question, so, it really depends on the production. Sometimes, I've worked on films where the director is very much an actor person, a very drama person. They depend on the director of photography to pretty much fully realize the visual aspects of it. And so in those cases, you have a larger role. It just really varies.
So you have to have this keen eye. It's not... people think photography, it's not just taking pictures, beautiful pictures. There's other pieces to it.
There are. As a director of photography, I'm always looking out for the performance. How are things coming off? Things that, are going to, that I'm pretty much, well, nowadays it's different because everything's electronic and everybody can look at a monitor. But, in the past, you'd be looking through a viewfinder. And so nobody had the exact point of view that you would have looking through the lens. Regardless, I'm always looking for how's the timing, how's the performance? Does this really express, what's wanting to get expressed in the scene? And I'll relay that to the director. So, with a lot of directors, we work hand in hand. I'll say it won't necessarily be a DP, thing that you're dealing with. But at the same time, if you saw it, you should absolutely, mention it to the director and say,
Right.
well, you know what, I think in this, take, we could have done this a little bit better, or this, and you do it quietly. You don't want to usurp the director. You want to always feed things to them and then let them decide whether they want to act on that or not.
Right. What other industries do you see that are DPs gravitating to? I mean, because I see that could be used in other types of industries.
Yeah.
For,
Well, I mean, it's a filmmaking position, so you have commercials.
or it just has a different name, but they do the same types of duties. I mean,
I don't know that there's anything quite like especially being a dramatic director of photography. I mean, you're telling a story. You have to tell a story with a camera, and where you position the camera, the perspective, the focal length, the kind of lighting, all those things contribute to the story being told, telling a certain, creating a certain mood, and having it be a tone and a mood that is right for the film.
Right.
I mean, if you're shooting a love scene from, When Harry Met Sally, it should be a very different feel from a scene from The Terminator, for example.
Right.
And,
then that way we know he don't know what he's doing, or she don't know what she's doing.
Exactly. It's like, why
like that was supposed to be a love scene, not a murder scene.
Why did that killing look so romantic? That was weird.
So prior to, I like to ask this question just to get a feel of my guest. Before Mr. DP, what was the young Adam like? What was he into?
Oh, I can't talk about a lot of things, but no. I mean, I've been into photography my entire life. I started taking still photos probably when I was about 11 or 12 years old. My brother had a Nikon camera, a film camera, and so he would let me borrow it. I would go out, I would take pictures. I'd take black and white pictures. I'd go into the bathroom. I had a whole setup where I would develop the negatives. I had an enlarger. I would print the pictures, and I was just always fascinated by it. In high school, I got more and more involved. I'd asked my industrial arts teacher, Mr. Barrett, I said, I want to learn more about photography. What do you think I should do? He said, you should go to the Rochester Institute of Technology, which is in Rochester, New York. And Rochester is where Kodak is based. And the two entities work very closely together. So you go to your first year at Rochester and you get a huge packet of goodies from Kodak because they want you to use their products and understand how they work. A lot of the most complicated and technical texts on photographic science, instrumentation, chemistry were written by the professors there. So I went there and studied photography. And, that was really sort of the impetus. And then after that, and I had an eye towards filmmaking, and then I went to NYU Film School.
Was there someone that inspired that interest?
Not, my best friend, probably Brian Polito, who you may or may not know, who also lives here in Arizona. I know that
the name sounds
Buzz
familiar.
knows him. Yeah. So, we kind of spurred each other. We were kids, so it wasn't like, we were both successful and I want to do that. We were both interested in the same things. We liked collaborating and working together. We've been best friends since the age of 12 and still are. So, that sort of companionship and partnership, I think, was a good structure and very supportive in me deciding to pursue a career where there's not really a lot of guarantees. A lot of people go into this industry and end up doing something else.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, or it becomes a hobby for them.
Yeah, people ask me that. They're like, I went and I don't shoot weddings. I'll never shoot weddings. But a friend of mine got married a couple weeks ago, and she was up in Payson. She said, I cannot get a videographer up here. Could you bring, like an iPhone? I said, I'll do you one better. I'll bring some equipment. And so I did, and I brought cameras and all kinds of stuff. And people were like, do you do this, or is this just like a really expensive hobby for you? I'm like, no, this is what I do. But I don't shoot weddings. Nothing wrong with shooting weddings. It's just a whole different discipline.
Right, just a whole different discipline.
Yeah.
So, as a DP, where do you see, is there a next level of where you would want to see yourself? I mean, is there a ceiling, a glass ceiling for a DP?
Not really. I mean, there's not a glass ceiling for sure. A lot of DPs become directors. Jean de Bont, for example, who went on to shoot a lot of, to be a director in a lot of high-profile films. Started out as a director of photography. Ernest Dickerson is another one. Ellen Kuras, for one. She started out doing documentaries and then shot narrative films and then became
Okay.
a very, very accomplished and very talented director. Some of my favorite television that I've seen recently was directed by her. Every time I see one, I text her. I'm like, "Oh, what I just saw your show was amazing." So, that's kind of like and a lot of DPs, you become a DP. It's kind of the, in that realm, it's the pinnacle of what you would want to do in that industry. And some want to become directors.
Yeah.
For me, I do both. I'm a director DP. So, again, depending on what it is, as a director DP, it's a great position because you can conceptualize and realize the vision, and
Right.
and depending on who you're working with or if you're working for
Right.
clients and that sort of thing, obviously they're going to have some say,
Sure.
but it gives you a lot of creative freedom to be able to work that way.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk more about your new venture
Yeah.
that you just started, which this is lead. So Adam, we were talking about being a DP and being able to direct and having that eye to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And as a DP, you have also started another business where you have a studio now.
Correct. Yeah, it's in North Phoenix. It's close to the I-17 and Carefree Highway, so we're a little north and a little bit of west, a little bit east of there. We have a 1,000-square-foot studio. It's got 10-foot ceilings. We've got 100 amps of power. We've got green screen. We've got different color backdrops. We have lighting. We have Kinoflow lighting. We have ARRI lighting. We have Mole Richardson lighting. We've got LED lighting. We've got several different cameras and grip equipment. We've got a Dana Dolly. So, and we have a small wood shop. So you can pretty much go up there and fabricate and shoot anything that you could do, in a 1,000-square-foot space. It's in a somewhat rural, even though it's close to Carefree Highway. We're just off in a rural area. There's a lot of parking. I mean, you could park 100 cars there with no problem.
Okay, so it's
whatsoever.
a full-fledged studio.
Full-fledged studio. Yep, we make it available for people who want to come in and do their own productions. And there's lots of different ways we can work with people, from just saying come in and do whatever you want to do, to providing staff.
So as a DP, are you for hire also? Are you a part of that?
They can hire me to. I mean, typically what would happen is a client would hire me, and then I would use my studio to to shoot the production, or productions come in where they have a DP and they have a director, and they would rent our studio, and then we would provide them with a studio manager who can help them select equipment and get it set up and that sort of thing.
Okay. Do you guys have a la carte services where, let's say, they only want to do a certain thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very flexible. We're not,
okay.
for sure. And then we also have post-production. So we've got two post-production bays. One has DaVinci Resolve for editing. We've got Final Cut, and we've got the Adobe Suite, all the Adobe
so
tools.
you guys have space for that?
We've got space for that. We've got a little edit controller, and then the other edit suite has all of that, and then it also has color grading. So we've got a calibrated color grading monitor. We've got a DaVinci mini panel for doing color grading.
And what's the name of your studio?
DNA Cinema Services.
Okay.
DNA, people think, DNA like your DNA. It actually stands for Diana and Adam. That's my wife.
So we were talking about your family, your children.
Yeah.
So are they in training to run this business or learn what Dad's learning here? Well, Dad knows here.
We'll see. My oldest son, Wyatt, who's actually sitting right over here, is about to turn 16 years old, and he has been out now with me on, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 productions. And it was interesting. The first one was right before the pandemic, actually. And I hadn't, really given him any instruction or training, but he had this kind of natural knack for it. Like, I didn't have to tell him what to do. He kind of knew like where to be and what to do, and what to pay attention to, and really, has a good feel for film production.
You know what?
So,
a lot of times we think because they're sitting there on those phones or whatever, games or whatever they're doing, just wiggling their thumbs, we think they're not paying attention. But a lot of times they're paying attention. They know what Dad is doing. They probably can tell you, hey, Dad, you left that over there. You did this.
Yeah.
But they're paying attention. I found that with my daughter. They're very observant.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he's been great on set, and,
wonderful.
Really has a good feel for it. So I don't, so far he said he wants to be a Navy SEAL. I think he's got the, what it takes to do that. But
nothing wrong with that
we'll
at
see.
all.
He can always be a filmmaker, and we've got the tools and the resources to do that.
Right. So I like to ask this question also. What advice would you give to an aspiring DP?
Yeah. So I'm also an adjunct instructor at Glendale Community College and
Okay.
Scottsdale Community College. So I do get to deal with a lot of up and coming filmmakers.
Okay.
And, you know, I've had an opportunity to really, first of all, look at how did I learn to be a filmmaker and how do other people learn to be a filmmaker? And here's the thing that I always found was missing in traditional filmmaking education, which is still sort of I mean, even it's decades old at this point, but it's still recent compared to other educational disciplines. Sort of the master apprentice approach. You know, there's certain things like you want to be a master carpenter, you apprentice with a carpenter and you watch what they're doing.
Right.
In film school, they tell you what to do and then you go out and do it. But you end up doing it wrong. I mean, that's what I did and that's what most of the students do. So when you learn to play an instrument, for example, let's say you're going to learn to play a guitar, you don't go out and write a song and then try to play it, right? You listen to something that has already been done and you try to imitate it. So what I've started doing with my students is I'll give them an assignment. I'll say, here's a scene, reproduce this scene. Get the tone, get the feeling, get the framing, get the perspective, the lens choice. See if you can train yourself and your eye to be able to look at something and know what went into making it look like that. And it's really good training. It really trains the eye and the whole way of approaching things so that they develop a skill set and they can actually then go out and they're producing, they come back with things. I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks just like the original. I mean, they've produced some really amazing work. And I'm finding that you might think, well, they're imitating somebody else. How can you be learning? Well, I don't know. That's how you learn how to play music.
Right.
And they're learning a lot faster.
I mean, I don't know if you can say they're actually imitating because they really don't know what went into making it. They're just going off of what they think.
Yeah, you have to be able to look at that and figure out what that was.
Right.
And so it's been really useful, and they're producing some really good work. That's one thing. The other thing is stick with it. Just it takes a while. I mean, I remember, I was back on the East Coast and I graduated film school. First thing I did actually after I graduated film school was I was a production assistant on Crocodile Dundee. Worked on that film for
I haven't
about.
heard that in a long time.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I mean, what a great crew, and what a great professional learning experience. It was on such a huge scale, compared to what I've been doing. So it was a great learning experience, and it's the first time I saw things really starting to be done the way that they're meant to be done. I'm like, oh, we never did it like that in film school, which goes back to the sort of master apprentice approach. And then I worked as a PA on the Equalizer television series, and then I just kind of kicked around for a while. It took a while. I was ready to give up, actually. I was ready to take a full-time job. And then I got offered the next freelance gig, and then I moved to California. And, at the time, it was like, oh, man, how long is this going to take? Well, I look back on it, it was 3 years.
Wow.
Not that long.
And I really strongly believe in internships or externships,
Absolutely.
whichever one you're doing, because you're right. Like you said, school and work is two different things.
They really
so
are.
You need that little bit of training to see how it's done in the real world.
My other piece of advice would be go work in the film. If you want to be a filmmaker and you want to go to film school, go work for a couple of years, then go to film school. Because what happens is, in film school, you have all these resources. You have cameras, equipment, people.
Right. People that's done it already.
Yeah, I mean, and just people to help you. Like, hey, can you help me shoot my film? Like, try to get that done with your friends on a weekend. Forget it. We're like, I'm busy. But in film school, they have to, right? Except you lack the experience to take the most advantage of it. So if you've gone and you've worked for a couple of years and you have some experience in how things are actually done, then go to film school and put that experience to work. If you want to be a director or DP, you're now going to have an opportunity to utilize those resources in a way that you wouldn't have not having had that experience.
I'd like to ask this before we run out of time. Tell me about one of your most memorable productions you've worked on.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. There's been so many. Let's see. I mean, we did a film here in Arizona called The Graves that was shot up in Wickenburg. And it was the first digital film that I'd ever done. Up until that point, I'd always shot on film, and we used the Red 1 camera. And it was with Brian Polito. Brian was the director. And the film ended up getting picked up by Lionsgate for theatrical distribution, which was pretty remarkable given the low budget we were working on and the way that we did the film. But I remember, we had a very ambitious schedule, a lot to get done, a very ambitious shoot. And one night, Brian and I we're workaholics. We have been since we were kids, and it was a night shoot. We had a lot of handheld shots. It was like way out in the desert, and we had. worked together up until that point where if, because it's exhausting, right? If I didn't know what was going on, he did. And if he didn't know what was going on, I did. We both got to the point where it's like, what are we doing? I don't know. What are we doing? I don't know. We both kind of reached the end of our rope.
Wore out.
We were worn out, but we managed to pull it together and get it to happen.
That's
anyway.
awesome, man.
The other thing,
I have a long time buddy like that in the industry. That's awesome.
It's amazing. I mean, it really makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. So where can our audience find you?
So they can find me at dnacinema.com. It's DNA, the letters dnacinema.com. The other thing that we've branched into over the last couple of years is virtual production. The pandemic has forced a state change in how people do things. We have pioneered the ability to produce broadcast quality 4K digital cinema remotely. Our scope has expanded from, a few states to the world. We're shooting around the world and never having to leave our desks and producing some really amazing work and with some really amazing clients. In fact, we've had the best couple of years we've ever had.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's so we can go on your website and check all that out.
Yeah,
right?
you can. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Well, it was such a pleasure learning about you and DNA Cinemas. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm
getting tired. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. It was my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us here today at Desertwood Days, and we'll catch you next time.
Today's episode of Desertwood Days with Kathy Blaze was sponsored by Movie Group. Visit them at dreamnetworkchannel.com.